Want a healthy snack option for you and your family? Try homemade hummus. Hey there, welcome back to At the Table. Today we're going to be continuing with Going Med, and we're focusing on increasing those whole grains. So I've got a ton of different whole grains up here for you to see, and the difference between a whole grain and what we call a white grain or a refined grain is going to be that a whole grain has all three parts of a grain. So you've got the germ, which is going to be the innermost layer of the grain. Then you've got the middle layer that also has a lot of proteins, carbs, and then you've got your outer layer, which is where we have all of that fiber. That's the bran. And the purpose of that is we're getting a lot of fiber with that bran, which is the outermost layer, and we're getting a lot of good B vitamins with that germ, which is the innermost layer. But when we strip those and we go down to what we call the white or refined grain, we're just left with that inner layer, which is just has a lot of carbs and protein, really, is what is in that part. So that's why we want to try to increase and eat more whole grains so that we can get that fiber, get those B vitamins. And with the med instead of meds, with the Mediterranean diet, you want to get at least half of your grains to be whole. And so think about in your entire day, trying to make any of the grains that you're eating, half of those be whole grains. So a good thing about that is if there are certain whole grains you really don't like, so if you don't like whole wheat bread, but you really like whole wheat pasta, you can substitute and switch back and forth so that you are getting whole grains still in other parts of your diet. So we do have several different things. I'll talk about these a little bit later on. We're gonna go ahead and get started with our recipes. So today we have two different recipes. One is gonna be a chicken fried rice, and then the other one is a white bean hummus. They are both from our Med Instead of Meds recipes websites. So we're gonna start off, I've already got my chicken cut into cubes. It's only about a cup of chicken, and that's about 2 small chicken breasts. So I'm gonna add my oil. My pan, my wok over here is on low. Went ahead and turned it on just a little bit. And we're just gonna add a little bit of oil, about 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil there. And we'll get that oil nice and hot, and then we'll throw in that chicken. So with my chicken, I wanted to make sure I used a special cutting board, like a glass cutting board. That way, if you're using anything like this, this cutting board here, you can actually see some of my cut marks from cutting on this so much. And the thing about that is anything that's plastic, or if this is kind of more of a cork, you can start getting those dips in your cutting board, and that's gonna cause you to have germs, and it will harbor those germs from any of your meats. So you wanna avoid using this type of cutting board for cutting your meats, and try to use something that's a little bit easier to clean, that's not gonna cause it to have grooves in it when you're cutting. So I'm gonna throw this in. Let me use my spoon here. And I'm gonna up my temp over here. Like I said, I had it on low. And the difference in a wok versus more of your saute pan, a wok, I actually got this for Christmas from my mother-in-law, and I love it. It's something you can actually boil water in that. And then it's also something, it cooks at a high heat, but anytime you're cooking vegetables, your food's not just sitting in the moisture is gonna evaporate, and it helps to leave your vegetables nice and crispy and crunchy and get them a little bit more charred than when we're using more of a saute pan, like a flat stir fry or saute pan. So a wok is really great just for helping to give you that char, help your vegetables get that nice crispness, and help the moisture to evaporate. So when we're frying, we're making chicken fried rice, we don't want that to be kind of wet and mushy, right? We want it to get the nice crunchy texture on the fried rice. So that is why we are using a wok. If you don't have one, definitely add it to your list of kitchen things that you want to get and invest in. So we're gonna let this chicken cook just a little bit longer. It'll take about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna further cook it a little bit more when we start to add our vegetables and all of that stuff as well. So we will let that get going, and then we will see you right back in just a second.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
All right, so we've got our chicken. It has cooked. I did switch my spatula halfway through. So one thing that I like to do when I'm cooking any raw meat, if you're actually cooking your raw meat with a spatula or some type of utensil, you think about that. That's gonna still have that raw contaminated meat on it. So if you're taking that out with the same spatula or whatever utensil, you're still contaminating your meat some. So I did switch halfway through, and I washed my other one to use for our vegetables. And we're gonna just add this to a bowl, remove it from the pan entirely. So I'm just going to throw this in here. And it's still got just some juices from that, from olive oil, and then just natural, the juices from the chicken are kind of running off. So we're gonna keep our pan on. I'm gonna turn it down just a little bit, and we're just gonna sit our chicken to the side. Now remember that with chicken, we wanna cook it to 165 degrees. So using a thermometer is best practice in making sure that it is cooked all the way through. You can't actually tell just by looking at it that it's cooked. So make sure that you temp that using that thermometer. We're gonna add that back to the pan and still cook it further. So this chicken gets cooked a little bit more than just if you were looking for a chicken breast that you still want to be nice and juicy and tender. So we'll have that to the side. We're gonna move on. Our next step is to use some fresh ginger. So I actually like to put my fresh ginger in the freezer. And a good thing about that is it helps it to it's easier to peel that way. And you can just throw this in a freezer bag and it lasts forever. So I'm gonna peel a little bit of this. Now I did remove it from the freezer about 30 minutes ago, so it's already starting to thaw out, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But you can actually just use a spoon to do this. So you don't even need a knife to peel the ginger. We're not using a whole lot of this. I think it lasts better in the freezer if you keep the peel on. I've tried it both ways. That's just my experience. I enjoy having the peeling still on and peeling as I need it. So I'm just gonna chop. We only need about 2 teaspoons of that. So I'm just gonna chop a little bit of that and set it to the side. And remember with our knife, we wanna make sure that we're holding it at the blade closer to the handle, nice grip on your knife, and then watching those fingers using that rocking motion to cut. So moving our fingers slowly, and then I'm gonna go the other way. And we're just gonna chop this up real good and then throw it into our hot pan. Now, a great thing about this is you can really add anything that you want to in your chicken fried rice. So any vegetables that you enjoy, you can throw in there. So I'm just gonna add this fresh ginger. You can hear it sizzling. All right, so now we're gonna add our garlic to that, and I always use fresh garlic. I actually don't have fresh garlic today. I have garlic powder, and JW, our producer, is very excited about that because he is not a fan of fresh garlic, but he doesn't mind a little bit of garlic powder. So if you don't have any fresh ingredients, like if you don't have the fresh ginger root, if you don't have fresh garlic, you can use garlic powder or ginger powder. The only thing is you want to cut back on that. So 1/8 of a teaspoon is actually equal to 1 clove of garlic. So just make sure you're being mindful of that. Personally, I feel like the fresh stuff has greater flavor. It's more rich. But when it's in a powder form, it is condensed more, so you can get more flavorful that way as well. So I'm just gonna try to eyeball about 1/8 of a teaspoon. We only need about 2 teaspoons of garlic in general. So freshly chopped garlic, you need about 2 teaspoons, which would probably be about 1 clove, 1 smaller clove. So we're letting that just simmer up, and then we're gonna get to chopping our green onions, throw that in the pan, and start working on our vegetables. So we'll see you right back.
Sweetie, will you turn that down, please?
Keep life exciting, even when it's not. Watch TV everywhere from Star Communications.
So we've got our garlic and ginger in here. I'm just gonna add a little bit more olive oil, not even a whole teaspoon, maybe half a teaspoon to that. And I've got my, my temp on low just for right now because our ginger and garlic is nice and fragrant right now, and we want to, I've still gotta cut these green onions, so it's gonna take just a minute. So we'll just leave that on low. I'm gonna cut off the ends of my green onions. I always do that just because sometimes you've got these ends that are gonna be just a little bit more grungy looking, and we don't wanna put that in our food, right? We want it to look nice and pretty and make it appealing to the eye. So I just cut off a little bit of that, and then we're using 3 pieces of green onions. So I'm just gonna cut these into really whatever size you want for your green onions. I might chop them a little bit further, but they don't have to be really finely chopped. And I actually use the entire green onion. So I go all the way down to that white part. You can use the white part as well. It's gonna be more flavorful as a regular white onion. It's kind of what it's gonna have a flavor profile of. But I like to utilize the entire thing, and that's just reducing that food waste. So I'm getting more for my money, right? Because the more stuff you're throwing away, more money you're throwing away. And I just like to use as much as I can. So we've got all that green onion there. You can use 3 to 5 pieces of green onion. I just went for 3 because we actually have a lot of vegetables in this. And if your green onions are nice and flavorful and fragrant too, they might also make you cry. So my eyes are actually tearing up from this as well, and some of that is in that white part of the green onion. Like I said, it's got kind of more of that flavor as what a white onion would have. So I'm gonna pump up our wok here, turned it to about medium heat, and I'm gonna add that green onion in. And this is just gonna help to, again, make our fried rice nice and flavorful. Fresh garlic, fresh ginger, fresh green onions, those are all things that help to flavor a dish that you are making. So you want to put that more to the beginning of your dish when you are cooking, and that will help to kind of bring out the flavors of those different foods in your dish. All right, so next we're going to start adding our vegetables in. So we've got, you want to have about 2 cups of chopped vegetables, And you want to always start with your sturdy vegetables. So I'm going to start with these carrots. And that's probably half a cup of chopped carrots in there. And since they're more sturdy, they're going to take longer to cook. So we always add those in first. That way the things that I call our more flimsy vegetables, they don't get really soggy. So we're going to let those cook just a little bit. And then I also have peas. Now these were frozen peas. I've got about a cup of these. I love peas in chicken fried rice. To me, I just really like the sweetness that goes in. It gives it a little bit more flavor profile, flavor contrast. So since these are frozen, I'm going to add these in it as well, just because they're going to take a little longer to cook since they're frozen. Now if you were to use canned, you'd want to add those at the end. If you were using fresh peas, you could kind of add those to the middle, probably around the time that we're going to be adding our mushrooms. And I'm going to crank up the heat. So like I said, with a wok, you want to, when you're doing more of a stir fry, which is typically what we do with a chicken fried rice, you want to use that higher heat. And that's going to start to cook your vegetables really well, and it's also going to help to evaporate some of that water so we don't have a lot of water, our vegetables are just sitting in that water. It's already looking really pretty. We've got a lot of really beautiful colors in there with that green and orange and some of the white coming from our green onions as well. So we will let that cook for just a few more minutes, and then we will jump back in and finish up with our last two vegetables. We've also got some brown rice, and then we've got our chicken. We'll mix it all together and it'll be ready to eat. See you then.
After completing my contract, I still have to buy out of it? Come on. Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
All right, so we've got our vegetables cooking over here. We're gonna move on and start working on our other vegetables. So I've got some mushrooms. Actually, we're gonna go ahead and throw in this cabbage here. So I have, this is probably about 2 cups, cup and a half to 2 cups of cabbage. And I just bought the almost coleslaw cabbage that was already chopped up in the grocery store. You could absolutely buy a fresh cabbage and chop it yourself. This is just easy for me, and I can also use the rest of that cabbage later for coleslaw or for something else. But I love to add cabbage to my stir fries or anything that I'm doing in my wok. So we're gonna let that cook. And my temp is on about medium high, just to give you some reference. So we're gonna start chopping up these mushrooms, and a good thing with mushrooms is you can kind of rotate them, and that way you're working with that flat edge again. I'm gonna leave them big, just because I think that's pretty in a chicken fried rice. You could cut them smaller if you want to. Another way that you could chop these is cut them in half, and then that way you don't have any wobbly vegetables that you're working with. Watching those fingers, and just working your knife. So like I said, you can cut these however you like, whatever works best for you. You do just want to make sure they're a little bit more uniform. Oop, that was not really in half. And that way they're all going to cook evenly. And if you weren't sure, you can cut or use the stems of the mushroom. I like to use the entire thing. That way, again, reducing that food waste, using up all my $1 that I spent to purchase these mushrooms. All right, so I'm gonna throw these mushrooms back or into the pan with the rest of our vegetables. You want this all to cook for about 5 minutes. So once this is done, we're just gonna add our rice and our chicken, and it will all be good to go. And the last thing that we're gonna add is gonna be soy sauce. And as this is cooking, I'll just talk to you a little bit about soy sauce. We're not adding any salt or pepper to this. And the reasoning why is when we look at that soy sauce, now this is reduced sodium soy sauce. There is still 500 milligrams of sodium in this for just 1 tablespoon. And this is the low sodium option. So to give you some context with that, that's 22% of your daily value. And we say anything above 20% is considered high. So this is a high sodium food, even though it's reduced sodium. So if you're adding this, then you're adding salt on top of that. Now we are using all fresh vegetables. There might be there is sodium naturally in food. So there might be like natural sodium in these vegetables, but we don't already have a ton of sodium in this anyways. So this isn't a whole big deal. I mean, this is also gonna be spread out between several servings. So you're gonna have, this is a lot, so this, depending on if this is a side or if this is your main entree, you could have anywhere from 4 to 6 servings from this recipe. So just keep that in mind. We wanna be mindful of our sodium intake. It does contribute to high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, so we just wanna be mindful. So this is looking really good. I'm gonna go ahead and add our rice. Get that heated up. Now this is already cooked. This is 2 cups of cooked brown rice. So we're getting our whole grains in this way. And I like to let my rice really cook, stir fry really nicely in my wok for a little bit longer, just to give it that added crunch. Might be making a mess over there. That's all right. It's not good unless it's messy. Isn't that what they say? So we'll just keep getting this cooked really well. And then the last step is I'm gonna add that chicken, adding it back to the pan here. And then we'll let this finish up and we'll see you right back with it all done.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
All right, so our vegetables, our rice, everything is cooked nicely and heated through. So we're just gonna throw this in our big bowl here. And now we're gonna add our soy sauce. You only need 2 teaspoons of this. The good thing about this, since we're adding it after, it's not going to evaporate and cook out as if you added it while you were cooking. So that's a big, important part to think about as well is we don't want it to evaporate out because we still want to taste that soy sauce. So just stir that up nicely and you can taste it, see how it is. If you need to add more garlic powder, because I love garlic, I would do that. If you wanted to add some black pepper, you could do that. So make this your own, any vegetables you like, but this is, like I say all the time, this is your recipe. You make it how you like. So that is good to go. I'm gonna move that to the side. And we're gonna transition over to our hummus. Now hummus is a bean dip pretty much. It's made with beans and you can use white beans. This is a white bean hummus. So we're gonna be using cannellini beans here. You could use black beans, so any type of beans that you would like. And we are gonna add our lemon juice first. So we have 3 cans of beans. You could also use 3 cups of dried beans and cook them. When you're using canned beans, make sure that you have them rinsed out really well, that you rinse them so that removes some of the sodium. And then you can also make sure that you cook them a little bit more. So I actually threw them in the microwave, cooked them for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. And then that way they mush up a little bit more. So it'll give you that consistency you're wanting. So we've got our food processor locked in, ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and add, this is 1/2 cup of lemon juice. This entire container is 1/2 cup. So we're just gonna add the entire thing. Actually, I'm gonna add just a little bit now, and then we're gonna blend and then adjust as needed. So we'll start with that. And then we're gonna add just a little bit of olive oil. And the recipe calls for 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So I'm just eyeballing this, and I'm gonna adjust as needed. We want this to be a nice kind of a paste, very creamy. So that's the consistency we're looking for. We're gonna add the rest of that lemon juice. So it's a whole 1/2 cup that we are adding. And if you don't really like lemon flavor, you could switch to, you could do more lemon juice if you love lemon flavor, or you could switch to start adding water. All right, and that's what we want it to look like. So that's exactly the consistency we're looking for. And let me just remove all of this. And we're just gonna take this off and throw it in our bowl here. And you see it's got that nice creamy texture, and really that's what we're going for. This is more like a bean dip. So just think of it that way. The consistency you would want in a bean dip is gonna be similar to this. And it really is a bean dip. We just used a lot of beans, and we just mixed those all up. So next we're gonna add tahini, and I was able to score this in Food Line. First time I've been able to do it since I've lived in Clinton, which has been 4 years. So I was really stoked about being able to get this. If you cannot find tahini, tahini is just sesame seeds and olive oil mixed together. So we're using, I believe this is 2/3 cup here. And you could also blend this if you would rather blend it up in your food processor. You do have to have a food processor or a blender or something in order to blend all of this. You could absolutely try to mash the beans and go that route, but it's a little bit more difficult. So tahini, as I said, if you cannot find it, just blend sesame seeds and olive oil, and that is tahini. That's all that tahini is. It's just like a sesame seed paste, almost like a sesame seed butter. So think of it in that consistency. We're gonna add some salt and pepper. And if I can get the lid off, there we go. And you could add other seasonings to this that would be really good. So paprika, or if you wanna make it spicy, you could do some chili powder. And we're gonna add a little salt, remembering to be mindful of how much we're adding. So really this is just to taste. And if you use canned beans, then sometimes you're gonna have some sodium added in those canned beans as well. So be mindful of that. And it looks really good. For presentation, we always add a little bit of olive oil to the top, and it makes it look real pretty. If you go to any of the fancy Greek places or an Italian place, they will sometimes add that olive oil, and it just looks so nice and creamy and delicious. Now I have some carrots here that you could absolutely pair that with, so throw it with some vegetables, and that could be a nice side. You could use this as an appetizer. You could use this on a sandwich as a spread, so instead of mayonnaise or any other ranch or something like that, you could use that more of as a condiment on your sandwiches. So there's a lot of things that you can actually do with hummus. It's one of my favorite snacks. And I just wanted to show you some other things that we have here. So another thing I enjoy, we're talking about whole grains today, And Triscuits are one of my favorite crackers because A, they're whole grain, and they actually have a good amount of fiber. So we've got 3 grams of fiber, which is more than some of our other crackers. It's lower in sodium. It's only got 6% of your daily value of sodium for 6 crackers, which is really good. And there's not a lot of added sugar to this compared to something like Wheat Thins, which does have added sugar. So you could absolutely use crackers. Vegetables is a better way to go, but you do have some options. And then some other whole grains I just wanted to mention. We used brown rice today, and this is a great option for that whole grain. And then we have quinoa, which we have used before in our other cooking series. This is a whole grain option. All these things you can find at your local grocery store. I shop at Food Lion here in town, so you could absolutely go there, find all of this stuff, and you've got several options of whole grains. And we've got whole grain pasta as well. So just keep that in mind as you are making options. We want to up those whole grains. That will up our fiber intake, and fiber is what helps keep us moving. It helps it also helps protect our heart. So we want to have a lot of fiber in our diet, and whole grains is a great way to do that. Thank y'all.